Continuing on with our discussion of indirect fire, we're going to go over some of the different types of indirect fire in this video. In this one, we're going to look at HE, the multi-rocket launching system, and the dual-purpose types of indirect fire that they have. Now, we're going to go in depth on HE, and for the most part, the other two are resolved very similar to HE. So with these two, we will just take and cover the differences between them and HE, and other than that, they will be resolved pretty much the same as HE. So when it comes to HE, you can either get that from some of your onboard units, like these two that I have on the board here, or you can get it from an offboard, which you'll keep track of on the player aid that I have on screen for you now. You can see your dual purpose and your multi-launcher rocket system are also kept track of there. While the dual purpose is like HE, both of them can have different types of strength. The rocket system will always have a consistent strength, and that's why it's marked down the way it is on your player aid. So let's say for our purposes, an HE strike has been called in here on this fire for effect marker. Now we're in the resolve phase. We've already done our spotting, our drifting, and all of that is already taken care of, and we're to the results phase of that. Every unit that is in the hex is going to be attacked by the indirect fire individually, and they're all going to be hit by the strike. For HE, you're pretty much going to use direct fire procedures in resolving this. The modifiers that can come into play, the combat results, all of that is going to remain the same when you're resolving this type of indirect fire. Do keep in mind though, when it comes to onboard indirect fire, they are subject to long-range penalties, but they don't get the point-blank range bonus. Now, you're going to resolve this the same as direct fire until you get to the part about where saves are calculated, and that's where things are going to get a little different. If it's an infantry or an unarmored target, they are going to gain defensive bonuses for the terrain type and concealment, and that's where they'll get their D6 that they'll roll for their defense. However, light and heavy armor, like the T80 that we have in the hex here, are handled a little bit different. They are not going to use their armor value. They're going to continue using their save value though. So where you see that their save value down here, they've got a 4 or 5 for their total armor. They wouldn't use that 4, but they will use the 5 as the number that they're rolling for. The thing is, they're only going to roll for the defensive bonuses for the terrain type and concealment, just like as infantry and unarmored targets, but they will get an additional 1d6 defensive bonus, again, subject to the maximum defense bonus that you can have. There is an exception to this if the indirect fire is either a mortar or a self-propelled mortar, like this onboard unit here. If that is the indirect fire, then the heavy armor or the light armor unit will use their armor save values as normal. So if this unit were to call in the indirect fire, you would use the 4 or 5 value listed down on the T80. But if it were something else, offboard or HE, for example, then you wouldn't, and you would use any terrain defensive bonuses or concealment that the T80 had instead, along with that 1d6 bonus they receive. After you've calculated any defensive bonus that they receive, you would resolve it just like you would normally, rolling for any potential hits and saves, just like as in direct fire, and this includes for any HQs or leaders that may potentially be in the hex as well. For an HE strike, once it's resolved, you're going to remove this marker. If it's an offboard, you will take and move the counter down on your player aid or mark any onboard unit as ops complete. Okay, so when it comes to the multi-launch rocket system, it's going to be resolved just the same way that I was just talking about with HE, with a couple of exceptions. The first one is you do have to make a strike reduction check. And for this, all you have to do is roll 2d6. If a 2 or a 12 is rolled, then the firepower of the strike is going to be reduced by 1. Other than that, if the strike hits, once you've accounted for any potential drift and all that, where the fire for effect marker is going to be affected by the rocket attack, and all 6 adjacent hexes will be affected by the attack as well. Other than that, you're going to resolve it the same way that we were talking about with HE. If it's a dual purpose, it is also going to be resolved the same way as HE, with the exception that it also has a strike reduction check, with the exception that it's a little bit larger than the rocket system. It is going to be reduced on a 2, 3, 11, or 12. Then you'll reduce the firepower of it by 1 and then carry on as normal, just like you would for the HE attack. This one, unlike the rocket system though, only affects the hex that it's placed in. It does not affect the 6 surrounding hexes.